Hi, this piece is entitled Acting Like the Guy I Want to Be. 30 years ago, I moved here to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting. I think I might have been the only one who did it that year. Anyway, when I got here, I began thinking about the kind of roles I wanted to play, the kind of roles I thought I could play. And I gave these roles titles. There was the wacky ethnic guy, the mercurial ethnic guy, and then my favorite, the hybrid, wacky but potentially mercurial ethnic guy. But all my planning was for naught. That first year saw very little breakthrough. In fact, I didn't get cast in anything for the first year. And then finally I got cast in a small role in a large studio film, a film called Final Analysis with Richard Gere and Kim Basinger and Eric Roberts and Uma Thurman and Gary Oldman and me. My character's role in that movie was Guy in Elevator. It was a stretch, but I knew I could get there. Anyway, I got the script, and I found myself on the set at the Universal Studios at 7 o'clock in the morning. And my scene is up first that morning. And I realized in that moment that I'm a pretty decent actor because as the first AD introduces me to Gary Oldman, who I'm doing my scene with, I realize I'm not acting nervous, which is exactly what I was. And I'm not acting nervous because I understood implicitly that you can't act with somebody if you're impressed with their talent, unnerved by their talent. You have to be who you are. So anyway, we get on set, and the scene takes place in an elevator, very cramped space. And like I said, the first shot is my close-ups. And I'm thinking, this is great. They want me to go first. This is a coveted position. Come to find out, they wanted me to go first as a means of giving the other actors the chance to wake up. I thought, no problem. I can stretch my thespianic muscles. It'll be great. So in a blur of speed and motion, the first set is up, and we do a shot, and the director calls cut so quickly that I'm left feeling like a spun top, which must have registered on my face. I must not be that good an actor because that panic must have registered on my face. And just as we were getting ready to do a second take, Gary, who had very generously climbed up on the camera stand and was feeding my lines from next to the camera lens, leans into me and says, "You're doing great. This is really difficult." Now, I don't know that I've ever wanted to kiss a man, ever. But I can tell you, in that moment, it was a viable option because, as I'm sure he knew, he validated my feelings and liberated me to excel, which thankfully I think I kind of did. So we finished the morning shoot, and it's time for lunch, and Gary asks me if I'd like to join him for lunch. And I think, well, of course, thinking we'd have lunch in his trailer. But he wants to have lunch on the lot. So we go to a concession stand, we get some food, and we sit down at a picnic table where I become aware of a phenomenon I had no experience with, and that is the gravitational pull of fame on all those people around it. Because people are walking by us, and they're seeing Gary, and they're going, "That looks like Gary Oldman with nobody famous." And you could just see their features go limp when they saw me. Very interesting. Just as we're eating lunch, and I'm about to tell Gary how earlier that day I was feeling over my head because, I came from working class roots and I did not formally study acting, Gary launches into a story about his history, his experience. He grew up in a very poor family, grew up in a home that they were so poor they couldn't afford indoor plumbing. He'd never stepped inside a restaurant until he was 16 years old. And then suddenly, at some point in his evolution, he got cast in a movie called Sid and Nancy. And he went from being this unknown struggling actor to becoming Gary Oldman, famous actor guy, international star, marrying Uma Thurman, jetting all over the world. And suddenly, people who previously would have had nothing to do with him were suddenly clamoring to hear every syllable on any given topic he cared to wax poetic on. And he knew that. He knew that if he hadn't been touched by Lady Luck's random gift, that would not have been the case. And hearing this, I was almost moved to share my own story. Except for some reason, in hearing it, it drained all the value, all the meaning I had put in those roles that I thought I would play, leaving them empty, leaving me with the realization that I could play a role I'd never even conceived of, and that role was me. I could be myself. Because whether you're an actor or not, isn't that life's goal, life's purpose, to figure out who you are and to live with the consequences. And if that's hard for you to do, try acting like you understand. Take it from an ethnic guy who knows. You may just be pleasantly surprised. In a bit of a postscript, we were done shooting that day. Gary came up to me, gave me a hug, and said, we really must stay together. Let's get together sometime down the road, but let's stay in touch. And I said, sure, that would be great. He gives me the hug, turns around and walks away without giving me the means by which to stay in touch. Years later, I wrote about this experience, and I sold it to the LA Times Sunday Magazine section, the Hollywood Rules section. And the day that it was published, I was feeling very celebratory. Went down to Santa Monica, had brunch, had a $100 brunch at one of the hotels down on the shore. And I was out walking with a friend of mine afterwards on the shore in my own private Idaho. And I see her looking at somebody and watching them go by, and her neck cranes. She says, "Did you see who that was?" And I said, "No." She said, "That was Gary Oldman." And it wasn't even ironic for me. Anyway, stay healthy.